Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
The Commission on Presidential Debates says its planned debate schedule will not change. Find out why former President Trump's campaign calls it unacceptable.
Police storm an occupied building at Columbia University, arresting dozens of anti-Israel protesters. New York City Mayor Eric Adams says external agitators are trying to hijack the protests.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Israel today declares the time is now for a hostage ceasefire deal. More on the top diplomat's 7th trip to the Middle East since October 7th.
More than 50 mayors descended on Washington yesterday. Their goal? To get lawmakers to tackle homelessness, what they said about the growing crisis.
Utah taking a stand against human rights abuses in China. What the state is doing to combat forced organ harvesting.
Government censorship by proxy. It's when the government pressures non-government actors to censor certain voices. It's been the topic of previous hearings on the weaponization of the federal government. We'll bring you the latest hearing on this.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
New York City police arrested dozens of anti-Israel demonstrators at Columbia University and City College last night.
And police also removed the Columbia protest encampment. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the events.
Hundreds of police, some in riot gear, arrived at the Columbia University campus shortly before 9 p.m. They entered the Hamilton Hall academic building through a second-story window, climbing on a ladder truck. Protesters broke into and occupied the building earlier in the day, smashing windows and glass. Inside, police said there were about 30 or 40 protesters who were taken into custody. Dozens more have been arrested for protesting the police response. Here, police officers disperse a group of anti-Israel protesters outside Hamilton Hall. Columbia University officials earlier on Tuesday threatened academic expulsion of the students who seized the hall. Anti-Israel protesters wrapped in the Palestinian keffiyeh mocked NYPD officers by comparing them to the KKK, then demanded the release of students. Here, a masked demonstrator pulls down barriers, frustrating officers. Shortly after police moved in, Columbia University President Manoush Shafiq released a letter in which she requested police stay on campus until at least May 17th, 2 days after graduation, to maintain order and ensure that encampments are not re-established. New York City Mayor Eric Adams asked protesters to leave the Columbia campus earlier Tuesday. Adams said the city can't allow what should be a peaceful gathering turn into a violent spectacle that serves no purpose.
This must end now.
The New York City mayor says non-student agitators are playing a major role in the anti-Israel demonstrations.
We have sounded the alarm numerous times before about external actors who are attempting to hijack this protest.
Over at City College, anti-Israel protesters chanted about justice and peace as they walked backwards. Officers walked calmly forward as anti-Israel protesters screamed at them. Police led a line of demonstrators, some handcuffed, some zip-tied, to waiting buses. After restoring order, the police enthusiastically removed a Palestinian flag at City College and then restored the flag of the United States of America. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
As protests roil college campuses across the country, a bipartisan bill to combat anti-Semitism is on the table. The House is set to vote on the Antisemitism Awareness Act in just a few hours.
It would require the Department of Education to use a definition of anti-Semitism from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance when enforcing anti-discrimination laws.
The bipartisan effort is led by Republicans Mike Lawler and Max Miller and Democrats Josh Gottheimer and Jared Moskowitz.
Now, it's won support from Jewish organizations. The American Civil Liberties Union, on the other hand, opposes it, saying there are already laws against anti-Semitism.
And people across the world today may be taking part inadvertently in one of the world's greatest atrocities, the theft of living organs from prisoners of conscience in China. But not if you're in Texas or now Utah. A new law puts a stop to health providers covering or providing post-care for organ transplant surgery in China and any other country where forced organ harvesting is believed to occur. That's because transplant tourism continues today, with people traveling for procedures that could save their lives and yet end in others. To shed light on this horrific phenomenon, we're joined by Weldon Gilcrease, the Deputy Director of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Dr. Gilcrease, welcome. How significant is this law in Utah in a symbolic sense, and also how many lives do you think could be impacted?
It's a great question. I think the thing about transplant is it's a complicated procedure that involves many different facets. So there's not just the transplant surgeon or the people in the operating room, but also the aftercare and the doctors that take care of those patients afterwards. There's nurses, social workers, and there's a whole host of a team. So I think looking at it as one victim that's killed for their organ, for one transplant, for somebody from Utah that may travel there, it's not just that one victim. I think a lot of complicity from the entire medical field, not just in China, but in Utah, in the aftercare of those patients. It also has the ability to protect a lot of those people as well.
For sure, and nobody would knowingly want to take part in something like this, but it is hard to believe forced organ harvesting from a living person. Could you explain how this came about, how it is a systemic thing happening in China and who it's targeting?
Yeah, so what happened in China, if you go back to the 1990s, China was doing very few transplants. So as an example, they were doing less than 25 or 20 liver transplants per year. And starting in the early 2000s, you see this explosion of transplant data or number of transplants that are happening in China with no organ distribution or organ donation system within China. So there was really no explanation for it. And in 2005, a liver transplant surgeon within China is on film essentially saying 95% of our transplants are coming from executions. Now, the word that he used was executed criminals, but what came out in 2006 was that these weren't criminals that were being harvested in terms of their organs after an execution. These were people that were being killed on demand. And it really coincided with the crackdown on Falun Gong practitioners in 1999. So what happened in 1999 when the government turned against 70 to 100 million Chinese that were practicing Falun Gong was that you flooded the detention centers, the prisons, the labor camps with roughly 450,000 to 1 million Falun Gong practitioners who were, for the most part, young and healthy. They didn't smoke and they didn't drink. And so what you have in China in the transplant system is going from very little transplants to essentially using Falun Gong practitioners as victims and killing them on demand for their organs. This has also spread to other victim groups like the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, who are in concentration camps, and 1 to 2 million Uyghurs are in concentration camps in Western China, but also probably House Christians, Tibetans, and other victim groups within China.
Right, yeah, so we've got Uyghurs, you mentioned that's a minority group, ethnic group within China. Falun Gong, a spiritual meditative discipline that's targeted and has been targeted for at least 2 decades within China. So these are groups that are really being targeted for who they are. I just want to ask you next, what do you think needs to be done to raise enough awareness and garner international support to help end this practice? Because nobody around the world wants to take part in this.
Yeah, and it's exceptionally hard to believe that it's happening and that it continues to happen. I think that even though this is a step in the right direction, as a physician, I'm somewhat disappointed that a lot of this hasn't come from the medical community, and I think that's really two-part. I mean, one is there's just not enough awareness, and then one is, I think, a fear of standing up and stepping up to the Chinese regime, which is still collaborating with a lot of our American institution and Western institutions in terms of medical facilities, medical doctors, researchers, et cetera.
And what do you think people can do to learn more about this, just individuals out there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, just even a simple search for forced organ harvesting, you can find, in my mind, the three major reports. The first one from 2006, which is the Matus and Kilgore report. In 2016, there's a 760-page report that came out called An Update to the Slaughter and the Bloody Harvest. That's available online. And then in 2019 and 2020, there's a 7-person independent tribunal chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, and their report, which is over 500 pages, is also available. I think the easy part is finding the data and finding the reports that exist out there. The hard part is actually starting to sift through a lot of that data. Simple other ways of looking at it are there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of documentaries on it that I think shed light on what's happening and what has happened in the transplant system in China.
And certainly people can turn to your organization, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, to see how they can also help out and learn more. Thank you so much, Dr. Weldon Gilcrease. Great to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And next, House Speaker Mike Johnson is on thin ice with his job. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene signals that she will move forward with an attempt to oust him just one day after House Democrat leaders promised to back him.
Here's the Congresswoman speaking at a press conference earlier this morning.
We cannot let people down again. We cannot fail President Trump. Next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I'm here fighting every single day to push my party to be a Republican-controlled majority that will fight and pass his agenda when he's in the White House in January. And right now, we are not that Republican majority. We have a speaker, Mike Johnson, that by the way, I elected him. I voted for that man, so I have every right to be standing here. It wasn't a choice of America. It was a choice within our Republican conference. And I voted for Mike Johnson because his voting record before he became speaker was conservative. He voted against funding Ukraine. He was solidly pro-life. He voted to secure the border. He voted to fight against Democrats, fight against the witch hunt against President Trump. But once he became speaker, he has become a man that none of us recognize. He passed 3 continuing resolutions, and then he finally passed a 2-part omnibus that fully funded Joe Biden's agenda and the Democrat agenda, funded the Department of Justice that wants to put President Trump in jail for the rest of his life, which is a death sentence.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel today, declared the time is now to reach a deal to free hostages and pause the war.
Blinken met with Israeli leaders in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv this morning. This comes after talks in Saudi Arabia and Jordan.
Even as we're working with relentless determination to get the ceasefire that brings the hostages home, we also have to be focused on people in Gaza who are suffering in this crossfire Hamas is making. And so focus on getting them the assistance they need. The food, the medicine, the water, the shelter is also very much on our minds and in the work that we're doing.
Blinken says Hamas would bear the blame for any failure of this hostage deal. He said today, no more delays, no more excuses.
Blinken also met with protesters calling for a hostage deal and told them officials would not rest until everyone returns. He asked those affected to keep strong and to keep the faith.
The top diplomat is on his 7th trip to the region since the war began. When leaving Jordan yesterday, Blinken said a first batch of aid from Jordan is heading into northern Gaza through the Erez crossing.
Blinken says the U.S. is ready to drive forward on all fronts to get more humanitarian aid to civilians. He said there are still issues making sure aid gets to those who need it.
Coming up, Louisiana's new congressional map is rejected by a federal court. It would have created a new majority black House district. How the decision creates new uncertainty as the state prepares for elections.
And new documents now show which cities the Biden administration is flying immigrants to in the controversial parole program that skips over the border. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
We all know that words have power.
They set things in motion.
and make us happy or sad.
But there's one word that stands out because when people say it, lives are changed.
It's not a big word.
It's itsy bitsy.
It's only 3 little letters.
But when you say it,
the life of a kid like me can be changed.
So, what is this special word?
It may surprise you.
it's yes.
Yes.
Yes!
Yes to becoming a monthly supporter of Shriners Hospitals for Children.
That's right. Your monthly support allows the doctors and nurses at Shriners Hospitals for Children to give the most amazing care anywhere and change the lives of kids like me.
And me.
And me.
Because people like you have said yes. Now I can play football.
And I can play catch.
And I can walk.
So what do you say? Will you say yes right now?
It's so easy.
All you have to do is pick up the phone or go to loveshriners.org right now and say yes. When you say yes to giving just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day. My life is filled with possibility because of the monthly support of people just like you who called the number on your screen and said yes.
Yes.
Yes!
Yes.
Your yes is making a difference in my life and the lives of so many other kids like me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to say yes right away.
Thinking about retirement? Would you like to have retirement income that you can count on for the rest of your life? How about up to 33% more income? Call this number to get this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This book is filled with valuable information uncovering little-known secrets to help you maximize your income in retirement. And it's free. Retirement income you can count on starts by calling for this free book. As a bonus, we'll also rush this annuity rate report, also absolutely free. Annuity National researched numerous products and summarized the rates and benefits of annuities from foremost insurance companies like Nassau Life and Annuity. Call for both these free books. Annuity National, retirement income you can count on for the rest of your life. Call now.
For your free books, call 800-808-0303. That's 800-808-0303. 800-808-0303.
The Commission on Presidential Debates says it's sticking to its planned debate schedule, with its criteria being applied in early September. That's what the commission told Fox News on Tuesday after the Trump campaign asked the commission to move the dates earlier and add more dates.
In response later Tuesday, former President Trump's campaign managers criticized the commission in a statement. They said refusing to move up the dates of the debates is unacceptable and, quote, a grave disservice to the American public.
Trump's campaign extended an invitation to American networks to host a debate. They said they're calling on President Biden's team to work with them to set one up as soon as possible.
Day 9 of former President Trump's so-called hush money trial was a busy one yesterday.
Prosecutors questioned attorney Keith Davidson, who previously represented Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. In 2016, he helped both women shop around stories about their alleged romantic relations with Trump.
Davidson described the $130,000 deal he made with then-Trump attorney Michael Cohen to buy Daniels' story. Prosecutors also questioned C-SPAN archive director Robert Browning.
That testimony was a vehicle to enter several C-SPAN videos into evidence. 2 clips showed Trump denying allegations from women who accused him of sexual assault after the Access Hollywood tape was released. Others show him talking about Cohen, Truth Social, and his marriage to Melania Trump. At the same time, Trump has lost his latest attempt to get his criminal trial in New York paused. An appeals court in New York denied Trump's request yesterday.
Trump's lawyers asked an appeals court several weeks ago to stop the criminal trial from moving forward so he could appeal a lower court's ruling on presidential immunity. At the time, a single appellate judge denied Trump's interim motion to delay the trial.
Now all 5 members of the appeals court have weighed in.
A federal court yesterday blocked Louisiana from using a new congressional map. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the map that drawn to create a second black majority district in the state.
A three-judge panel of the U.S. District Court in Monroe, Louisiana, voted 2-1 to block the state from using the newly drawn map. The map would have created a new district with a 53% black voting age population. The map was redrawn after a federal court ruled Louisiana had disenfranchised black voters. The state's population is 1/3 black. State lawmakers in 2022 redrew the congressional map, leaving only one of 6 congressional districts with a black majority. Supporters of the new map said their plan was meant to obey the court's decision. Louisiana's GOP governor Jeff Landry signed the law in January, but soon after, 12 self-described non-African American voters filed a lawsuit against the state. They said the map was meant to segregate voters in a violation of the U.S. Constitution. The 2 judges who voted to block the new map pointed to statements made by lawmakers who created it. They concluded the primary motive was racial. The court ruled the map could not be used in any future elections and set a hearing for May 6 to discuss the next steps. The one dissenting judge said the evidence does not show race as a predominating factor in creating the new map. Louisiana Congressman Troy Carter criticized the court's decision, calling it on X just plain wrong. He also said the decision is likely to be appealed, writing the Supreme Court must correct this immediately. With Republicans struggling to keep their majority in the House, the new map could be crucial in the upcoming election. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Mayors from more than 50 cities came together in Washington, D.C. yesterday to address rising homelessness. They called for policies to mitigate the crisis. The federal government estimates homelessness went up around 12% last year compared to the year before.
The mayors gathered yesterday as part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Task Force on Homelessness. They urged lawmakers to increase funding for housing vouchers and expand housing for veterans.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said mayors are fighting to get people off the streets. She called on D.C. lawmakers to loosen regulations given the magnitude of the problem.
Toledo, Ohio's mayor said homelessness is not a red state, blue state problem, but something affecting all parts of the country. He said the media has created an impression that homelessness is only an issue in California on the East Coast.
New data regarding a controversial immigration program. The Biden administration uses the parole program to fly immigrants directly into the U.S. New documents now show which cities they're landing in. And just as previously suspected, the vast majority arrive in Florida. Homeland Security never shared where these flights land. Reports previously suggested that Florida might be a key destination. That's despite the fact that the Republican-led state is against uncontrolled immigration.
Now House Republicans received documents through a subpoena. They show where the immigrants landed from January to August of last year.
Miami and Fort Lauderdale were leading the list with around 150,000 arrivals in total. In comparison, New York City is at the 3rd spot with only around 15,000 arrivals.
In total, Homeland Security flew around 200,000 immigrants to 50 airports across the country during those 6 months. Americans keep saying immigration is the most critical issue facing the U.S. For the 3rd straight month, a Gallup poll put immigration at the #1 spot.
Gallup released the new findings yesterday. 27% of Americans say immigration is the most crucial issue the U.S. is facing. It comes out on top of other issues like the government, the economy, and inflation.
28% held this view in February and March as well. This is the longest consecutive window in which immigration has been a top concern for Americans.
The poll does not differentiate between legal and illegal immigration. So far, Border Patrol encountered almost 8 million illegal immigrants during the Biden administration.
A Harvard-Harris poll conducted last week found that immigration and inflation tied as the most crucial issues. Both stood at 35%.
And a group of 8 newspapers is suing Microsoft and OpenAI in a New York federal court. The lawsuit filed yesterday accuses the tech companies of using copyrighted articles to train their AI systems.
The newspapers involved in the lawsuit are from New York, Chicago, Florida, California, and Minnesota. They say Microsoft and OpenAI unlawfully copied millions of their articles.
The lawsuit says Microsoft's Copilot and OpenAI's ChatGPT systems reproduce the newspaper's copyrighted content verbatim when prompted.
An OpenAI spokesperson said yesterday their company takes great care in their design process to support news organizations. A spokesperson from Microsoft declined to comment.
The papers are asking for unspecified monetary damages and an order blocking any further violations.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, NJPAC, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. ShenYun.com.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Shen talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Next, we're tuning into a hearing on the weaponization of the federal government. Previous hearings on this topic have focused on government censorship by proxy.
That is, the Biden administration's effort to silence critics of certain viewpoints by pressuring social media companies to censor them.
The hearing is hosted by the House Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by Jim Jordan.
Let's tune into that now.
Centuries of experimentation on Black women because it's believed that we have a higher pain tolerance to be able to endure such experimentation. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s claims directly echoed those centuries past that as well scapegoated Jewish people and held entire communities collectively responsible for illnesses like the Black Plague, often as a precursor for massacres and pogroms. It should be no surprise, it shouldn't surprise anyone that Mr. Slavitt, Mr. Flaherty, and others in the Biden administration were concerned about these types of flagrant misinformation. They were trying to stop a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic that had already claimed far too many lives. So yes, Mr. Slavitt and Mr. Flaherty talked to technology companies about what they were doing to stop misinformation. This isn't a violation of the First Amendment to do that. It's an example of the Biden administration doing the work that a president has been elected to do, to keep Americans safe, to check on how companies are using their platforms to inform Americans. Unless the majority forget, the government is entitled to speak for itself. It's entitled to inform, persuade, and yes, even to criticize private speakers. If you want to have First Amendment, have it for everybody. Don't just have it for who you want. Just as Justice Kavanaugh noted during the recent oral arguments, and his quote is, "My experience is in the United States in all its manifestations has regularly communications with media to talk about things they don't like or don't want to see or complaining about factual inaccuracies," end of quote. In fact, Mr. Jordan's own staff regularly communicates with the press. He and I communicated with the press about the content of articles, and you know what? We're entitled to do that. The chairman and the majority claim that Mr. Flaherty and Mr. Slavitt somehow, quote, coerced social media and technology companies into removing content. But this committee, Republican staff, have gathered hundreds of hours of testimony showing that that is simply not the case. Over and over again in those testimonies, you'll see social media company executives told the committee that no matter who identified concerning content, whether it's a member of the general public, members of Congress, the White House employees, the companies evaluated the content against their own internal policies, only took action if the content violated those policies. And over again, social media company executives told the committee in no uncertain terms that no government official ever coerced them into taking action, no government official ever threatened them with any adverse consequences if their companies did not take action, and no government official ever promised them any benefits if they did take action. The committee has heard hours of testimony to that effect, but the majority has consistently rebuked our side, the minority's request that the testimonies be made public. The majority, who has controlled the tapes, likewise declined to provide us with copies of hundreds of hours of video taken during those investigations. That's because they know the evidence shows that their big investigation, their $20 million investigation, is a flop. Just like their impeachment investigation was a flop. Has anyone forgotten that the investigation hinged entirely on a 1023 form that was later determined to be completely fabricated? That's right, the key witness turned out to be passing along what may well have been Russian disinformation. And apparently that's the name of the game now. The extreme MAGA majority has spent its time, not to mention tons of taxpayer dollars, on baseless investigations that have gone nowhere. All of it in an effort to bully tech and media companies into turning a blind eye to right-wing extremist conspiracies that spread across their platforms, even when those theories violate very basic terms of service about deliberate disinformation and promoting violence. They haven't uncovered any quote-unquote weaponization in the federal government. If anything, it's the committee that has been weaponized for a 2024 election. It's no accident, as I said, that we're holding this hearing today as a Supreme Court opinion in Murphy versus Missouri, a case brought on by Republican State's Attorney General, vociferously supported by committee Republicans, so much so that they even have an amicus brief on it. We're having this hearing now. So I say, let's tell the whole truth. The hours of witness testimony showing that there is no there to Republican claims. So with that, I'm going to move to introduce into the record the transcript from the committee's May 16, 2023 interview with an employee of Meta Security Police Policy Division. I'd like to introduce into the record the transcript from a committee's June 20th, 2023 interview with Meta's Vice President for Public Policy, the transcript of the committee's June 21st, 2023 interview with Meta's Head of Security Policy, the transcript from the committee's July 25th, 2023 interview with Meta Misinformation Policy employee, the transcript from the committee's 2023 interview with Meta Trust and Safety Policy employee, the transcript from the committee's March 1st, 2024 interview with Meta's President of Global Affairs, the transcript of the committee's May 22nd, 2023 interview with Meta External Affairs Manager, the transcript from the committee's May 23rd, 2023 interview with the former federal partner manager at Meta, the transcript from the committee's May 31st, 2023 interview with Meta Programs and Partnership Team Lead, the transcript from the committee's June 14th, 2023 interview with the Meta Trust and Security Policy Manager, the transcript from the committee's June 27, 2023 interview with the former Public Policy Liaison at Meta, the transcript of the committee's September 19th, 2023 interview with the Security Engineering Manager of Meta, the transcript from the committee's May 23, 2023 interview with the Director of Google's Trust and Safety Organization, the transcript of the committee's June 22nd, 2023 interview with Google Legal Division employee, the transcript from the committee's July 19th, 2023 interview with the employee of Google's Privacy, Security, and Safety Division, the transcript from the committee's May 24th, 2023 interview with Google Trust and Safety Analyst, the transcript from the committee's June 1st, 2023 interview with a former Google Search employee, the transcript of the committee's June 16th, 2023 interview with YouTube employee who worked on external partnerships, transcript from the committee's June 23rd, 2023 interview with Google's Government Affairs and Public Policy organizational employee, the transcript from the committee's June 26, 2023 interview with Google's Information Quality Strategy employee, the transcript from the committee's June 28, 2023 with a Google Legal Security employee, transcript from the committee's April 10th, 2024 interview with a former Google Global Affairs organizational employee, transcript from the committee's April 25th, 2024 interview with the former Public Policy Manager of YouTube, transcript from the committee's November 1st, 2023 interview with the former Head of Trust and Safety at Twitter, the transcript from the committee's April 16th, 2024 interview with Amazon Public Policy and Community Engagement Division employee, the transcript of the committee's June 6, 2023 interview with the University of Washington Associate Professor Kate Starbird, the transcript from the committee's June 23rd interview with the founder and director of Stanford Internet Observatory at Stanford University, Alexander Stamos, the transcript from the committee's November 2nd, 2023 interview with the former employee for the Center for Internet Security.
Object.
Objection being raised. I would just say that we plan to release all these once we've talked to everyone we've interviewed and their counsel to make sure they're comfortable with it. When we get all that clear, we plan on releasing all that and the video as well. Chair now recognizes, without objection,
we're not asking them to be released. We're asking them to be recorded. You can enter them into the record and not release them.
And the gentleman objected to that. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We now introduce today's witnesses. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your patience for what was maybe the longest opening statement in human history. But we will now start with Mr. Flaherty. Mr. Robert Flaherty, is a former assistant to the President and Director of Digital Strategy at the White House. Mr. Andrew Slavitt is former senior advisor for the Biden administration's COVID-19 response team. Professor Todd Zawicki is the George Mason University Foundation Professor of Law at the George Mason University Antonin Scalia School of Law. Professor Zawicki is also a research fellow at the Law and Economics Center, and Mr. Matthew Seligman is a non-resident fellow of the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School. His research focuses on election law, constitutional law, federal courts, contracts, and private law theory. We welcome our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We begin by swearing you in. If you would please rise, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You may be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. Mr. Flaherty, you may begin.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of the subcommittee, I'm Rob Flaherty, and from January 2021 to June 2023, I served as the director of the White House Office of Digital Strategy. I'm appearing here voluntarily in response to the subcommittee's request for testimony about my interactions with social media companies during my time in government. I'm glad to have this opportunity to explain my role in government and to correct some of the misunderstandings of my and my office's work. I'd like to take a moment to remind the subcommittee of the time and context in which those conversations took place. When the Biden administration began in January 2021, our nation was in the midst of a crisis unlike anything we'd previously experienced. Every week, over 100,000 Americans were being hospitalized and over 20,000 were dying. These numbers aren't just statistics. They're tragedies for millions of families. There were
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Now we're coming back to a hearing hosted by the House Judiciary Committee. It's on the weaponization of the federal government.
Previous hearings on this topic have focused on government censorship by proxy.
That is, the Biden administration's effort to silence critics of certain viewpoints by pressuring social media companies to censor them.
Watch.
Facebook was exacerbating vaccine hesitancy while telling me they were working hard to address the problem. None of this is to say Facebook or any social media company must do as the White House asks. They don't. While I asked platforms to step up and adhere to their own stated priority of reducing misinformation on their platforms, which would assist in ending the pandemic, the choice was theirs. There were no threats, period. And while the social media companies turned down many of these requests, there were no consequences. Let me repeat that. There were no threats, and there were no consequences. For example, Twitter abandoned all of its prior policies related to COVID misinformation over a year and a half ago while I was still there. That decision was Twitter's to make, and I'm not aware of any adverse actions against Twitter in response to it. That's no surprise. My office never had or claimed any ability to require the platforms to act on misinformation. In closing, I recognize there are many issues around COVID misinformation on which reasonable minds can disagree. When my interactions with social media companies became at times acrimonious, it was not because they disagreed with my perspective. It was because the answers they provided to my questions about misinformation policies and algorithms were incomplete, misleading, or downright wrong. And in 2021, work related to the vaccine was too important to get wrong or unreasonably delay. Every day, more people were being hospitalized and dying of COVID. Some of those lives likely could have been prevented if more people were vaccinated. I'm proud of the administration's work to get people vaccinated and save lives. If you have questions about the interactions I had with social media companies during my time as the Director of Digital Strategy in the White House, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Mr. Slavitt, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Turn your mic on if you would, please.
That would help. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, members of the Select Subcommittee, I'm here today voluntarily to discuss my work on the COVID response team at the peak of the pandemic. Let me introduce myself and provide a brief statement. I'm Andy Slavitt. Between January 21 and June 9, 2021, I served in the Biden administration as senior advisor to the COVID response team. I've worked in the healthcare industry since the early 1990s as an entrepreneur, a business leader, a regulator, administrator, a CEO, and as an investor. I was asked by the Biden administration to assist in the difficult operational work needed to end the pandemic as quickly and safely as possible. Those first few days on the job are cemented in my mind. When President Biden was inaugurated, over 4,000 Americans were dying that very day from COVID-19. By January 2021, the number of COVID deaths was increasing so rapidly, it had become the #1 cause of death in the United States, nearly 50% higher than heart disease, the next leading cause. Thanks to the work of successive administrations, vaccines had recently become available. In those early months, we procured and assisted in the production of vaccines, sent military troops into the field to help Americans get vaccinated, and coordinated the many moving pieces of a response while providing the public with straightforward and clear information so they could keep themselves safe. As we did, we could see hospitalizations and the death toll begin to meaningfully decline. By June 2021, when I left the administration, more than 300 million doses of the vaccine had been administered to 2/3 of the public had been vaccinated. As a result, the number of COVID deaths were reduced in the 139 days of my tenure by 90%, from 4,000 on day 1 to 400, the lowest since the pandemic began. By June 2021, COVID-19 had dropped from the top cause of death to the 7th. I understand that the Select Subcommittee is interested in the Biden administration's interactions with social media companies regarding their policies on content moderation and how such conversations comport with the vital American ideals enshrined in the First Amendment. They were entirely consistent. My communication with social media companies consisted of a limited number of conversations, mainly concentrated over the course of a few weeks in the middle of my 4-month tenure. I was guided by 2 principles in my interaction with social media companies. First, any content decisions and judgments about their enforcement are strictly the domain of social media companies. While policies varied, most social media companies during the pandemic adopted standards designed to prevent what they considered to be the most harmful false content from spreading on their sites. Second, where public safety is concerned, having policies was not enough. As you will see today, I questioned social media companies on how those policies were implemented. Look, we are all aware of the issues that social media companies must contend with, from hate speech to sex trafficking to the sale of illegal drugs like fentanyl, to foreign adversaries attempting to sow terrorism or violence. It is useful for Congress and the executive branch to be able to have an open dialogue on these challenges with social media companies. It was not our job to set or enforce policies on social media companies. It was our job to understand how those policies were implemented and how their decisions would affect the safety of the American public. Despite any concerns I had about the impacts of the COVID misinformation, to my knowledge, no one within the administration ever sought to make decisions for Facebook or any other social media site over their content moderation. Further, we had no intention of coercing social media companies into taking any action, and I never received any indication that our dialogue ever was interpreted that way. Facebook and other social media companies heard our concerns and occasional complaints, and I would like to think they considered them. But I want to be clear that they made their own decisions. Starting even before this administration took office, Facebook reported publicly and told us that they had removed 20 million pieces of COVID content that violated their policies. Finally, I want to add that these conversations were not held in secret. We have spoken publicly about our interactions with Facebook, and they were the subject of a long interview, which I sat for with the New York Times. In closing, I want to thank the Congress for providing resources to successive administrations to fund vaccine development and help Americans through these dark times. By some estimates, these actions in the vaccination program alone saved 3 million American lives. Thank you for your time and your consideration of these perspectives. I would be happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Mr. Slavitt. Mr. Zawicki, Professor Zawicki, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of this select subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today to tell you about my experiences during COVID, but my experiences, I think, representative of millions of Americans who not only were denied the opportunity to speak freely about COVID policy and issues related to their own health, but millions of others who were denied the opportunity to receive information essential to their health decisions, the health and safety of their families, and important matters like public policy, such as whether schools should be closed, vaccine policy, vaccine passports, and other sorts of things. I got COVID. I was an early adopter in the first week of March 2020, and so had natural immunity. A year later, my university tried to impose a vaccine, did in fact impose a vaccine mandate. I asked them if they would recognize natural immunity. They did not. So I sued them with the help of one of my lawyers who are here today, Representative Hageman. Thank you for your help with that. And we prevailed, and I'm grateful to George Mason for granting me an exemption. But as I dove into these waters, what I discovered quickly was that all of the major news media, pretty much, were part of a cartel to suppress any heterodox opinions about COVID. And so as a result, I became very active on social media, and I discovered a number of doctors, such as the great Dr. Human Norchasm, my immunologist, who was tweeting and the like. And I became a very active participant. I gave lectures, I gave interviews about COVID policy and my case to try to inform the public. What I discovered was that, that there was this system of censorship going on quite clearly. I had been a very active user of Facebook early on, and then somewhere during the period that is under investigation, it became quite clear that my Facebook feed was being shadow banned. Do I know that for sure? No, because there's apparently no way of determining whether or not you're shadow banned on Facebook, but I could tell that my engagement had gone down. As I relate in my testimony, I had two programs removed from YouTube. One was an interview with the Bill Walton Show, not the basketball player, that described my case. And another was a lecture that I gave describing my case and the scientific evidence that underlies it. Both of those were removed from YouTube without explanation. To this day, I don't know what supposedly the medical misinformation was, whether it was something I said or there was somebody else on that tape who said it. Now, for those who were laughing during the ranking member's opening statement, let me tell you, as an academic, as somebody who takes ideas seriously. Being libeled as a spreader of medical misinformation is not a joke. Being denied access to information from doctors that is relevant to my health and my family's health is not a joke. This is not a game. This is my life, and this is a life of a lot of other people. What we saw going on during this period was an ongoing demand, now we've discovered an ongoing demand for immediate and swift action to censor people like me. There was no information provided that I could see in any of the records that have been produced that anything I said was wrong. I document my testimony, all of the things I said and the basis for saying it. Yet people like me were censored by people like them because they did not like what I was saying. And the First Amendment protects not just my right to speak, but my right to receive information that's relevant to my health. That was the seminal case of the Supreme Court in the Virginia pharmacy case, was that was a case about receiving medical information. I have a friend who is a leader in the vaccine injured group, React 19. He was part of a Facebook group. He suffers to this day from chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, an autoimmune disease brought on by the vaccines where literally his immune system is eating away at the protective myelin insulation that insulates his nerves all over his body. He joined a Facebook group for other people who were suffering like him, who had tens of thousands of people who were injured by the vaccines. That group, what did Facebook do with that group? They terminated it with no.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with YRefi, and they don't care about what happens with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com. YRefi, do well by doing good.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The walls surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
To begin the show, two major rivals in the GOP could be getting together for one another's benefit. We'll be joined by an advisor to DeSantis for an in-depth analysis on his thawing relationship with Trump.
Riot police enter Columbia University and arrest hundreds of protesters. We bring you footage of police reclaiming a campus building from protesters.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. We bring you more on the latest ceasefire negotiations.
The Department of Justice is moving to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. What do Americans think of the drug, and what are the concerns here?
The Fed is almost certain to hold its benchmark overnight interest rate steady, with investors placing nearly a 100% profitability on that outcome. Probability.
And what to expect was a U.S.-funded organization connected with coronavirus research in China. Lawmakers probe.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Police are starting to take more definitive action on the anti-Israel protests happening on college campuses across the nation.
Authorities just cleared out encampments at University of Wisconsin-Madison and Tulane after NYPD stepped in at Columbia University last night.
Here's the New York City mayor.
Those who broke into the building did include students. It was led by individuals who are not affiliated with the university. The school needed the NYPD's assistance to clear Hamilton Hall and the encampments outside. There were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influencing students to escalate. There's nothing peaceful about barricading buildings, destroying property, or dismantling security cameras.
And as protests roil college campuses across the country, a bipartisan bill to combat anti-Semitism is on the table. The House is set to vote on the Antisemitism Awareness Act in just a few hours.
It would require the Department of Education to use the definition of anti-Semitism from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance when enforcing anti-discrimination laws.
The bipartisan effort is led by Republicans Mike Lawler and Max Miller and Democrats Josh Gottheimer and Jared Moskowitz.
Now, it's won support from Jewish organizations. The American Civil Liberties Union, on the other hand, opposes it, saying there are already laws against anti-Semitism.
And the Commission on Presidential Debates says it's sticking to its planned debate schedule, with its criteria being applied in early September. That's what the Commission told Fox News on Tuesday after the Trump campaign asked the Commission to move the dates earlier and add more debates.
In response, later Tuesday, former President Trump's campaign managers criticized the Commission in a statement. They said refusing to move up the dates of the debates is unacceptable and, quote, a grave disservice to the American people.
Trump's campaign extended an invitation to American networks to host a debate. They said they're calling on President Biden's team to work with them to set one up as soon as possible.
Former President Trump's and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warming up to one another. Their years-long chill could be thawing this spring after a private meeting held in Miami on Sunday. Joining me now for analysis of the move is advisor to Governor Ron DeSantis, Robert Salvador. Good to have you on the show, Robert.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, as an advisor to the Florida governor, what do you know about the recent meeting between him and Trump?
Sure. Well, obviously they met to discuss, how fundraising help can happen, how the governor can use, some of his support to help to drum up, fundraising as well as voter outreach support for former President Trump. I think there's been a lot of made online with some of this infighting and maybe making things seem more serious between former President Trump and Governor DeSantis, than they really were. So they met to kind of call it bury the hatchet, to talk about how to do what's best for America, push forward, good Republican conservative policies, both at the top of the ballot and down ballot. So it was my understanding they had a good meeting and agreed that they were going to work together for the best of the American people.
Now, was this meeting expected, or should we be surprised by the fact that it happened?
I think the meeting itself may have took some people by surprise, but if you look at least on Governor DeSantis' side and, former President Trump's side, it shouldn't be surprising. Governor DeSantis has fully endorsed President Trump, after dropping out of the primary race. He's been clear that he thinks Trump is way better than Biden and more important to get in the White House. And he also said a few weeks ago at a donor retreat and a feedback session that they were planning to fundraise for Trump. So I think both sides did expect this, although the timing of the meeting may not have been planned. As you saw, Governor DeSantis and former President Trump have very similar network and support. And, one of those big supporters may have reached out to both of them and said, hey, let's have a sit down here. Let's figure out how we can do what's best for America, both short term, getting former President Trump back in the White House, and hopefully long term, following that up with, maybe 8 years of Ron DeSantis in the White House. So overall, I think it was a good decision, and maybe people are surprised, but I don't think people should be that surprised by it.
Now, you sort of touched on this briefly, but what does the former president stand to gain from any potential partnership with Ron DeSantis?
Sure. So it's pretty clear the two most popular and effective people in the Republican Party are Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. So you definitely want the top two in the party working together. Governor DeSantis only made it to Iowa in the primaries, but I think you would have seen he has a lot of support around the country. And so you definitely don't want to be, alienating that support. And so I think, we've heard some of the stories that the Democrats are doing a bit better in fundraising than the RNC is right now. And I think, bringing in Governor DeSantis, who has big backing and the ability to bring in resources for the former president is definitely something that'll be beneficial. And then also, securing the base. Obviously, President Trump has a very strong lock on the base, but I do think there was some people, a good amount of people who support Governor DeSantis who may have been a little bit iffy on their support because of how hard fought the primary was. And in order to win any election, it's all about the persuadables. So you definitely have to have your base solidified. So I think this meeting does both of those, brings in some really good resources for the former president, fully secures his base, and now Trump and DeSantis can work together to do that around the country and win the White House back.
Now let's look at the same for the Florida governor. What does he stand to gain from this partnership?
Sure. So if you look at what's happening in Florida, it's become a beacon of freedom, sanity, and success for the United States. And a lot of that has happened under Governor DeSantis the last 6 years. And so he has said, they have another 2 years to really solidify that, to take that success, make it, more long-term in Florida, as well as help to bring that to other Republicans up and down the ballot nationwide. So as, someone like Governor DeSantis has a big future in the party, you certainly don't want to be, at odds with the Republican nominee or even have any sense that people think that. So I think this is good for Governor DeSantis, both in his base support in Florida, as well as him bringing his name nationally as, the next in line after President Trump after here in 2024. So again, I think it was a really good decision by both sides, and I think they'll work together for the best of America.
All right, Robert Salvador, CEO of DigiBuild AI and advisor to Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Supreme Court declined to block a Texas law requiring porn sites to verify users' ages. But the decision is only temporary.
And the Department of Justice is moving to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. What do Americans think of the drug, and what are the concerns? More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore ShenYunCreations.com.
23 سال
16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردیم برانبر خشکو دایکان یزدی اما کاری که دور دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارودوخی که است های به تایبند ایران خوشبوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
وریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد
تامبون كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار فيدان نبو باوان رحم نبو ودمنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان ورستم بس مانا قوبس ناش بجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبري تي حملي زارود الدم واسسي وان همو جيبري
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده که همانه روزانه دست فروشیده.
Imagine being a child, you know, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
You need some help?
Your tow chains are a little loose. Could spark a wildfire. I could show you how to secure them properly if you'd like.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You should check out SmokeyBear.com. They've got a bunch of tips on wildfire prevention.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel at the moment, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and families of hostages.
Let's hear his comments on the hostage and ceasefire negotiations.
We're determined to get a ceasefire that brings the hostages home and to get it now. And the only reason that wouldn't be achieved is because of Hamas. There is a proposal on the table, and as we've said, no delays, no excuses. The time is now, and the time is now long past due to bring the hostages home to their families.
Blinken is visiting Israel in his push for a ceasefire deal between Israel and the Hamas terrorist group.
The current round of talks appears to be serious, but the sides remain far apart on one key issue: whether the war should end as part of an emerging deal.
A senior Hamas official says they're studying the recent ceasefire offer, but they don't want to be pressured. Blinken says the deal would allow much-needed food, medicine, and water to get into Gaza.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu is urging world leaders to stand against the International Criminal Court. Israel recently said that the court is contemplating issuing arrest warrants on war crime charges. The U.S. stated that the court has no jurisdiction to do so. The Supreme Court is allowing Texas to enforce age verification requirements for pornographic sites. It rejected a request yesterday from the adult entertainment industry to block the requirement on First Amendment grounds.
Texas state law requires any website that publishes a substantial amount of content considered harmful to minors to verify the age of users.
Lawyers for the trade group challenging the law said the law violates access to free speech online because it forces adults to identify themselves before accessing adult content.
The group filed an appeal to the Supreme Court and asked the court to block the law while that appeal is considered. The underlying appeal is still pending. And it's been 5 weeks since the bridge collapse in Baltimore. Crews now expect to remove the wreckage of the container ship by early May. That's good news for businesses relying on the port to transport goods. Right now, 3 shallow channels are open. A 45-foot deep channel is expected to be operational by May 10th.
The country's largest hydraulic claw is at work, removing pieces of the bridge from the Patapsco River. It will allow the main 50-foot channel to reopen by the end of May.
Currently, recovery efforts are ongoing for 2 victims who are still missing from the bridge collapse. The crash killed 6 construction workers who were on the bridge when it collapsed.
The National Transportation Safety Board plans on releasing its preliminary report on the disaster in the next few days. And federal restrictions for marijuana could soon become looser. The Justice Department is starting the process to make it a Schedule III drug instead of a Schedule I.
The change would ease criminal penalties, let marijuana businesses bank more freely, and give tax benefits to state licensed operators.
A Pew Research Center poll shows most Americans support legalizing marijuana for medical use and just over half for recreational use. Reclassifying it doesn't go that far, but advocates welcome looser restrictions.
Others caution that marijuana can lead to health issues and addiction.
Currently, state laws allowing marijuana exist in a gray area. The reclassification will take months due to steps outlined in the Controlled Substances Act.
The Federal Trade Commission has sent warning letters to 10 pharmaceutical companies. The agency yesterday expanded its campaign against so-called junk patents. Those are manufacturers' improper or inaccurate listings of patents. The agency is disputing more than 300 junk patent listings across 20 different brand name products. The companies being challenged include Novo Nordisk, which makes the diabetes drug Ozempic, along with AstraZeneca and Teva. The FTC is calling some of the patents filed by these companies bogus because they aren't related to the drug they sell. The agency also claims the patents could make the drug cost higher or prevent generic drug alternatives. So far, at least 5 companies have rejected the FTC's claim. The pharmaceutical companies have 30 days to remove or amend their patent listings. If not, they must certify under penalty of perjury that the listings meet regulatory requirements.
May 1st is known as College Decision Day, but many students don't yet know where they'll be this fall. These students are stuck in limbo as they wait for delayed financial award letters.
High school seniors must submit a financial aid application form known as FAFSA in order to qualify for federal loans, grants, and most financial aid.
But there were a number of processing problems and glitches with this year's rollout. Hundreds of schools had to push back their decision deadlines because of the delays, though some are still asking students to enroll and pay a deposit.
As of April 23rd, only about half of colleges had sent aid packages to some or all students, according to the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators.
After all the controversy, the head of FAFSA recently resigned. Chief Operating Officer Richard Cordray returned his resignation letter last Friday.
Still to come, Tesla CEO Elon Musk disbands Tesla's EV charging team. What this means for its EV charging network.
And a government-funded research organization defends its record as lawmakers search for answers amid explosive allegations on the COVID pandemic. We'll have the details soon when we return.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or a warm meal to eat, or whether anyone cares about them.
Like I grew up in poverty, and I actually became physically homeless right after I turned 16.
I didn't have anywhere to sleep, and I didn't really have friends or family that could support me.
To be homeless as a teen, I didn't ask for that.
1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year, and that's unacceptable. But the good news is there is an organization making a big difference, Covenant House.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis and giving them the support and tools they need to succeed in life.
Without the Covenant House, I honestly could not tell you where I would be today.
Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
I would not be here today if it weren't for the kindness of strangers, people who donated to Covenant House so that they could support me when I couldn't support myself.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations.
Your support makes the work of Covenant House possible.
Call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the tech and business world.
Don Ma, good to see you. What is happening out there in the business world today?
Yeah, well, good to see you as well, Chris, Steph. So the biggest thing today in the financial world is the Federal Reserve's decision coming later this afternoon. So here's a bit of a preview as to what we can expect today. So the Federal Reserve to announce its interest rate decision following a two-day meeting, and Fed officials aren't expected to make any immediate changes to interest rates. In fact, what we're expecting here is that almost for certain it is to hold its benchmark overnight interest rate steady, with investors actually placing nearly a 100% probability of that actually happening. So the annual inflation rate fell from 9.1%, as you remember, in June of 2022. So we're now sitting around 3% this year. So the inflation rate has been stuck around that level for a while now. Stubborn inflation rates have raised concerns about when the next interest rate cut could happen. But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell previously said that there is actually no rush, in fact, to cut rates. But, you know, he will likely be pressured on how many cuts are in store this year or next year, and details of the decision are expected to be announced during today's press conference later this afternoon. So we'll stay tuned and keep you guys updated.
Certainly, I might see you then talking about that in the afternoon show. Next up, Elon Musk has just disbanded Tesla's EV charging team. Tell us more about that.
Yes, so this is actually quite a surprise here. Elon Musk laying off employees who ran Tesla's electric vehicle charging business. So what that's about is the EV maker CEO dismissed the head of the business, Rebecca Tanucci, and most or all of the staff that operated and maintained the system. So this is according to multiple postings on LinkedIn and also Reuters, which cited two former employees. So Musk said on X that the car maker still plans to expand the supercharger network, but just at a slower pace for new locations. Now this move, as I mentioned just now, blindsided automakers here who were preparing for new EVs to use the Tesla supercharger network. But you know, for now, General Motors, Ford, and other automakers that struck deals last year to give customers access to the network said they're not changing their plans as of yet. Yep.
Don, Elon Musk is really making a name for himself with these sort of big, surprising moves like buying Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of his character. I mean, you can see that sort of coming through by the way, by how he talks and stuff. So, I mean, I can see where you're coming from with that. I think a lot of people would be in the same camp as that. So, you know, yeah.
Even seeing him turning to China recently this week for further investigation into whether he could push his EV cars into China more was a bit of a surprise, although of course he's a businessman as well. But
exactly, it was a surprise visit to China. But interesting thing, when Musk went to China, he canceled his trip to India, and I don't think Indian officials took that very well. So you know, a lot of erratic behavior here and there coming from Musk.
So we'll have to just wait and see what the next step is and what he comes up with.
Yeah, maybe he's going to buy TikTok.
Oh my gosh.
That'd be a new story and a half.
All right, Don Ma, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, next up, a virus research organization is under the microscope today before Congress. Lawmakers are probing allegations surrounding EcoHealth Alliance's president, Dr. Peter Daszak.
They're examining the organization's connections to coronavirus research in the Wuhan lab in China. Let's tune into that now.
The Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic will come to order. Welcome, everyone. At the discretion of the Chair and pursuant to an agreement with the Committee on Energy and Commerce, the Chairman and Ranking Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, Mr. Morgan Griffin and Ms. Kathy Castor are permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purposes of questions and give 3-minute opening statements. Without objection, pursuant to Clause 4A, 3A of House Resolution 5 and Clause 2J, 2C of House Rule 11, the Chair may recognize staff of the Select Subcommittee for questions for equal periods of time, not to exceed 30 minutes per side. Finally, without objection, the Chair may declare a recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Good morning. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the debate regarding the risks and benefits of a type of high-risk research, specifically what is known as gain-of-function research. Prior to the pandemic, the public was largely unaware of the existence of this area of research, let alone the fact that they were funding it. I know I first heard of it during our COVID lockdown while researching how we might treat patients suffering from this unique and deadly virus. In 2014, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, awarded EcoHealth Alliance, Inc., a grant entitled Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence. This grant included the collecting of novel coronaviruses from bats and conducting research on those novel viruses using laboratory mice. The laboratory work, where this research was actually occurring, was outsourced by EcoHealth Alliance to the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. Dr. Daszak, who is here before us, is the president of EcoHealth. Today, the Select Subcommittee released a report regarding EcoHealth and the evidence surrounding its research activities. This report highlights the Select Subcommittee's concerns with EcoHealth as an organization and Dr. Daszak's interactions with federal agencies and foreign entities, such as the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We have found that EcoHealth was nearly 2 years late in submitting a routine progress report to NIH, that EcoHealth failed to report, as required, a potentially dangerous experiment conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that EcoHealth used taxpayer dollars to facilitate risky gain-of-function research, and that Dr. Daszak omitted a material fact regarding his access to unanalyzed virus samples and sequences at the WIV, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, in his successful effort to have his grant reinstated by NIH. These are only a few of our findings, which are detailed in our interim report issued today, and will be further explored in the Select Subcommittee's final report. Dr. Daszak has been less than cooperative with the select subcommittee, and he's been slow to produce requested documents and has used semantics with the definition of gain-of-function research, even in his previous testimony. Dr. Daszak maintains that EcoHealth never conducted gain-of-function research by shifting definitions of this area of research put forth by regulatory agencies. I believe Dr. Daszak either cannot or will not distinguish between the common understanding of gain-of-function research and the more technical definitions provided under various and narrowly defined regulatory frameworks. But facts are facts. Research can be gain-of-function without meeting these somewhat convoluted and often hard to understand frameworks that only regulate a very minute subset of research. So minute that HHS has only ever reviewed 3 proposals out of thousands it receives every year. Using highly technical definitions in order to assert that a certain project really isn't gain-of-function research, when most others would suggest, as well as confirm in their testimonies before the select subcommittee, that it absolutely is gain-of-function, comes across disingenuous, comes across as a disingenuous attempt of avoiding questions and accountability. The fact is that, as most people understand it, EcoHealth was absolutely conducting gain-of-function research, specifically in Wuhan, China. Unfortunately, Dr. Daszak's problematic behavior is not limited to his less than fulsome cooperation or the risky research that he conducted. Recently released documents display Dr. Daszak communicating with Dr. David Morens, who was senior advisor to then NIAID Director Dr. Fauci, and doing so through private channels to avoid FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Dr. Daszak and Dr. Morens shared information, ideas, and strategies about how to best proceed to reobtain funding for this risky research after Dr. Michael Lauer had terminated Dr. Daszak's grant. Dr. Morens provided Dr. Daszak with internal NIH deliberations and discussions concerning the suspension of EcoHealth's grant, along with assurances that Dr. Fauci and NIAID would seek to mitigate the damage done to EcoHealth. On April 16, 2024, I announced a subpoena to Dr. Morens for documents in his email relating to the origins of COVID-19. Yesterday, Dr. Morens produced 30,000 pages of emails. Emails from his Gmail account, which he said he had used to avoid FOIA. So this investigation does not end today. Dr. Daszak told Dr. Morens in these private communications that he still had 15,000 samples, quote, in freezers in Wuhan, end quote, and had not yet analyzed more than 700 coronaviruses he had identified in those samples. EcoHealth has lamented, quote, the negative impact on U.S. national security, end quote, posed by their inability to sequence all the samples at the WIV. But EcoHealth's actions themselves are a threat to national security. Dr. Daszak has displayed a disregard for the risks associated with gain-of-function research, the congressional oversight process, and the federal grant process. Dr. Daszak has proven that he's not a responsible steward of the American people's tax dollars. We see no reason that the American people should be paying for EcoHealth's research or any other work Dr. Daszak conducts. Dr. Rees, I believe we agree on this, and there may be a path forward. And let me be clear, I support global health research. I support work that will make the world safer. That's why we are investigating all of this. Our concern is that this research, and research similar, does the opposite. It puts the world at the risk of a pandemic, something even Dr. Fauci addressed as far back as 2012 in an interview. Dr. Daszak, before I close, and as someone who has been shot at and someone who has received threats, I want to tell you that we unequivocally condemn all threats to you. To you, any public health official, scientist, anyone else. That is wrong and intolerable. I look forward at this point to an engaging and on-topic discussion. Thank you. And I would now like to recognize Ranking Member Ruiz for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was named ranking member of the Select Subcommittee last February, I made a commitment to follow the facts and objectively analyzing the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. I made a promise to keep an open mind about how the pandemic started, because understanding whether the novel coronavirus emerged from a lab or from nature is essential to better preventing and preparing for future public health threats and to better protecting the American people. And as the origins of the novel coronavirus still remain inconclusive, I stand by these commitments to this day. But as we approach the year-and-a-half mark of the House Republican majority, it's important that we take stock of what the Select Subcommittee has accomplished so far and the extent to which we have fulfilled our obligations to the American people. For more than 14 months, under the guise of investigating COVID's origins, this Select Subcommittee has relentlessly probed the relationship between the federal government and our nation's scientific community to prove, without evidence, Republican accusations that Dr. Dashak and EcoHealth Alliance created the COVID-19 pandemic. We have poured over more than 425,000 pages of documents provided to us by HHS, the State Department, the Department of Energy, the Government Accountability Office, universities, and private citizens.
Water, nature's ultimate cleaner. We drink it, we bathe in it. Think water, think steam, think clean. Now harness the power of water with the H2O X5 5-in-1 steam cleaning system.
I'm so impressed with the X5.
It's an all-in-one product, so I can use it throughout my entire house.
It's cleaning, it's sanitizing, there's no chemicals in it. It's just steam.
This is unbelievable. There is no more odor. You could spend over $500 to purchase the products that the X5 5-in-1 Miracle replaces. Order your H2O X5 steam cleaning system, a $500 value, for just 4 easy payments of $43. Order now and we'll upgrade your X5 package. We'll add a 6th mode with a dusting and polishing wand. Valued at over $30, this extra bonus attachment makes your H2O X5 the H2O X6. That means your 10-piece system becomes a 12-piece system at no extra cost to you. All for just 3 easy payments of $43. Call or click right now.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me. When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, I know you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
Want to know what's really happening around the world?
Join us for a deep dive discussion with our expert panel on International Reporters Roundtable.
We're tuned in to a congressional hearing with the president of the virus research organization EcoHealth Alliance, Dr. Peter Daszak.
It comes on the heels of new allegations by Senator Rand Paul that 15 federal agencies had been aware that in 2018, the organization had sought to genetically engineer a virus that's similar to SARS-CoV-2. But the senator says the agencies failed to speak up that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was pitching that research.
Just some of the latest regarding this ongoing probe. Let's tune in.
Difficult places. I now recognize Mr. Cloud from Texas for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. So you acknowledge you've received a grant in 2014, NIAID awarded an EHA grant entitled Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence to your organization, correct?
Yep.
That's not and once COVID outbreak happened, you labeled the lab leak theory as conspiracy theory.
That's not what I said, actually. I said that there were conspiracy theories at the time that we wrote about in our letter in Lancet, including HIV, sequences in the virus, and snake DNA, some very bizarre things.
Your opinion was used to help. You said trust the scientist,
yeah.
Not necessarily because of you. I don't know that you had any contact with social media companies. Did you have contact with social media companies during that time?
Well, I've posted things on social media.
As far as having, a number of the scientists, their opinions were banned. Our government even worked to help ban some of those scientific opinions.
That's not what we do.
That differed than yours. Would you acknowledge that that was bad practice, at least, that our government helped work with social media companies to help ban certain scientific opinions?
I mean, if a social
media... Do you think
media...
that benefited science? Do you think that was...
I think there's been a lot of misinformation. There still is on social media. I think it's good that social media companies are going to scientists to get information about whether the data they're putting out is true or false.
There were virologists who had years of experience, who had differing opinions, who were silenced.
Yeah.
License threatened to be revoked. All those different kind of things in the name of science. We had Fauci almost declare himself to be science, and that. Those kind of things, I think, put a deep distrust in the American people for some of the institutions we're now asking them to rely upon. Looking back, do you think there was any error in that? Are you concerned about that? Or do you think, hey, don't...
Well, I think, as I said in my opening statement, the emotions during a pandemic are very high. We have loved ones. We've all had that. We've all had our children infected by COVID and worrying that they're going to get really sick. And we know people who've died, and it's very upsetting, very tragic. I think the emotions lead to a sort of hyper reaction to some of these things. And I think that we should trust our scientists. And I think that the head of a government institute that's set up to work on infections...
Knowing what you know now, do you regret working with the lab in Wuhan?
Look, our mission is to prevent pandemics. Pandemics emerge
knowing what you know now,
places.
Do you regret working with them?
Pandemics,
not debating what you knew then,
it's
but knowing
our
what you
mission
now.
to do this. We don't do this because we want to go and work in foreign countries and risk our lives. Pandemics emerge there. If we can stop them there, we stop them getting here. That's what we do. It's written into our mission. It's in our DNA.
There's no evidence to a lab leak theory. That's what you've said today a couple times.
What I said, there's zero verifiable scientific evidence. Zero.
Okay, but we have evidence that the Wuhan lab destroyed data. Does that concern you at all?
Yes. Any lab that destroys data concerns.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, do you regret working with the Wuhan lab?
As I've said...
Do you think working with labs that destroy data is sound?
I have no choice. We work in countries where diseases emerge, whether they're our allies or our competitors. Because our goal is to stop those diseases from emerging.
So one of the troubling things for us when we go home, because we're representing the taxpayers, who no doubt are, most of them are not virologists or scientists, but they're going, we're paying money to fund research in a country that's in unrestricted warfare against us, that destroys evidence and then you still are like, well, maybe we should continue working with them. And
I recognize those concerns, absolutely. But if we want to prevent the next pandemic coming out of China, how do we know when it's going to happen? We need scientists on the ground to get that information so we're better prepared.
Do you maintain that the lab leak theory is a plausible theory today?
As I've said all the way through this, it's possible, but extremely unlikely.
And having done it over, you would continue to work with the Wuhan lab?
Well, there are a lab in China that does virology research.
This weighs into your organization is still receiving taxpayer funds, and you're still making decisions on which labs across the world that
we don't work
into.
in China. We don't work with the Wuhan lab.
Okay,
they're debarred from funding.
But the taxpayer right now is trusting you in some essence through the various recommended channels to make decisions on who we're working with, and if you're picking labs and you don't think it's an issue that a lab destroyed data and that's not a disqualifying factor, that's a concern.
Well, let me remind you, we didn't pick a lab. We proposed to do research with that lab. The State Department and NIH reviewed it and said that lab was on a list of labs that are preferred to work with.
Well, I'm out of time, and I know Dr. Fauci will be here, but there's the, quote, layers of accountability have become layers of plausible deniability.
Well, that's
in these different institutions.
It really is a fact.
And so we'll have to dig into that because my time's up. Thank
I'll
you,
send
Chairman. I yield
you
back.
the information about it.
I now recognize Dr. Joyce from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Wenstrup, for convening what I feel is a critical meeting. It is imperative that we are an oversight body who conduct an adequate investigation and ensure that the American taxpayer dollars are being spent judiciously and within the law. Dr. Daszak, why did you try to downplay the fact that Xi Jinping and other Chinese scientists will be working on your proposed grant to DARPA?
I did not. I told DARPA.
Did you make any edits to your proposal in order to obscure Chinese involvement in this work?
No, it's clearly.
Specifically, did you alter the number of Chinese investigators in initial application and follow-up application? Were the numbers the same?
There was only one application.
And so that number has always been the number of Chinese investigators that you worked with.
The application that was submitted to the agency is the only matter of record. Anything else is a draft. They're ideas that can be revised and changed.
Following up on some of my colleagues' questions, and I appreciate the candidness that we continue to pepper you with, because I think we have conflicting answers. Where are the sequences stored, and who has that database?
Those are two different questions.
I know that.
The sequences that we acquired from our work with the Wuhan Institute of Virology are stored at EcoHealth Alliance and have been shared publicly through GenBank, the NIH database, published and shared with this committee and other committees. We have other sequences that we acquired before our grant was renegotiated, which we're currently analyzing and will publish.
Do you feel you have all the sequences from the Wuhan Institute of Virology?
Well, I believe we have all the sequences of any relevance to COVID.
Having said that you're recognizing that data was destroyed, you feel that you have all the sequences
yes, I do.
that were not destroyed?
There's a reason for that.
You have all the sequences that were not destroyed?
No, I think we had all available SARS coronavirus related coronavirus sequences prior to the outbreak. I'd requested from WIV that they send us all their data so we publish a paper together summarizing the whole of the work that they do and we do. They included in the data they sent us sequences that weren't collected with our US funding. So we had access to all their information of any relevance to COVID. That was before the outbreak. So of course it didn't matter back then. After the outbreak.
That's a great point. It didn't matter back then. But subsequent to that, we recognize that there has been data that has been destroyed. So giving us data that doesn't matter is irrelevant to this
conduct. The data matters a lot. It didn't matter to them whether they sent it to us or not. Now we have the COVID pandemic and this huge geopolitical concern. There wasn't a single request for any of those sequences to be moved or changed. We published them in the summer of 2020 in a US journal with uploaded into a US NIH GenBank data.
So you have to count on the goodwill of the Wuhan Institute of Virology in order to meet your grant requirements, how does not violate the terms of the Wuhan Institute of Virology's debarment?
Well, we don't work with them. They're debarred.
So you have no further contact with them?
What I said is we don't work with them. We don't
Do you have further contact with them?
Of course we have contact. Under the terms of my renegotiated R01 with NIH, we have to publish data from that work. Of course, we have to send copies of drafts of papers, get them to check and make sure that they've included everything, that we've got everything correct. So, of course, we have contact with them.
Do you feel, given all the concerns that have been raised during this hearing, that EcoHealth should continue to receive taxpayer funds?
EcoHealth's work is critical, as I said in my opening statement, to preventing the next pandemic. Of course, we should receive federal work. We've worked very carefully and precisely with all of the federal funding we've had. We've reported on time in every other instance. The one instance we were unable to, the NIH system locked us out.
And we haven't been provided with data. There was an employee who made a phone call, but you're not sure they still work for EcoHealth, so that's still suspect
the NIH
for us.
employee doesn't work for NIH.
So you have documentation that your employees reached out. You have that employee that you could produce for us.
Every bit of documentation I've got, we've supplied. I think I have a few more other pieces that I can supply to
I think that's important that you supply that, because
yeah.
we, sitting on this side, are responsible stewards of the taxpayer dollars. But I feel that you at EcoHealth are not responsible stewards of the taxpayer dollars that have been shared for you. And I feel that based on the information and based on the actions that we have seen, I believe that you should never receive taxpayer dollars again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I now recognize Dr. McCormick from Georgia for 5 minutes of questions.
Dr. Daszak, how much was the grant that you were reinstated given for?
I think it was $2.2 million.
Okay.
Some of the money was never reinstated.
Okay. Your understanding the risk of back coronavirus emergency grant was eventually reinstated by the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, despite the fact that Wuhan Institute of Virology was barred from receiving federal funds. I think that was just discussed ad nauseum, so I won't kind of go into too much detail on that. But your grant was reinstated based on probably advice that you got from some people, and I just want to kind of go into that a little bit. Did you have any conversations with your grant about your grant reinstatement with Dr. David Morenz, the senior advisor to Dr. Fauci?
I don't know.
You don't know if you had a discussion?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know. I'd have to check my records.
Did Dr. Morenz ever give you any advice on how to reinstate your federal funding?
Yeah. I mean, I asked everybody who had any knowledge about the way NIH works on any possible strategy.
So you did have discussions?
With many, many scientists, both those at NIH and elsewhere, yeah.
So were you aware that Dr. David Morenz was communicating with you on his personal Gmail account to avoid FOIA and public accountability?
I was aware that he was communicating with me on his personal Gmail account, sometimes, yes, for personal matters.
So, personal matter about reinstating a public grant?
Well, it's not his job to reinstate it. This was me asking his advice as a friend and colleague.
About reinstating a federal grant. Got it.
Yeah, I mean,
do you find it problematic that a senior advisor of Dr. Fauci, the head of NIAID, was communicating with you on Gmail rather than an official capacity about an official grant?
Well, when I'm talking to him by email about personal and security issues and political attacks.
Security issues. So you talked with him security on his Gmail account?
Yeah, I talked to him about the attacks on my house.
Okay. Officially, when your grant was officially terminated in April of 2020, do you think that Dr. Morenz undermined NIAID's decision by advising you on how to get it reinstated?
Well, if that were true, then everybody else at NIH who advised me on how to get it reinstated, including the official reinstatement procedure, would also have undermined.
Fair enough.
Stop it getting reinstated.
Did you make any insertions that you would be able to obtain information from the Wuhan lab in regards to your research when you were trying to get your reinstatement of the grant?
The assertion was that the U.S. taxpayer who'd funded the work we did in Wuhan would get a fair shot at then getting that information and making it public to protect the US taxpayer from future coronavirus threats. That's a very valid and noble...
So you assume that you would have access to that information, is that correct?
We already had access to...
Before we head to break, if you have any feedback, please feel free to email us at news.today@ntd.com.
Stay with us. We'll have more stories in just a moment.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
A performance that truly matters. For each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Coming to Lincoln Center, NJPAC, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. Starting March 28th. Tickets at shenyun.com.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
Are you ready to help your family get prepared for the unexpected?
Everyone in? Here we go!
Ladybug and Cat Noir know how important it is to be ready. Because you never know when Hawk Moth is going to strike or a disaster will hit. And you don't need miraculous powers. Just put those planning skills you already have to good use. Know who to call, decide on a safe meeting location, and create an emergency preparedness kit. Make a plan that will help you and your family be ready when emergencies happen. Ready Kids can help.
I'm coming to save you!
Get started at ready.gov/kids.
Riot police enter Columbia University and arrest hundreds of protesters. We bring you footage of police reclaiming a campus building from protesters.
New York officials believe anti-Israel protests have been co-opted by professional outside agitators. Who they are and former President Trump's take on the demonstrations.
And Trump will hold his first major campaign event since the New York trial began. Find out more about Trump's schedule today.
Florida's 6-week abortion ban goes into effect today. A pro-life campaigner from Texas is telling women not to worry and is praising the benefits he says a similar ban brought the Lone Star State.
Russia is ordering more weapons for its war in Ukraine. Kyiv, meanwhile, blames its lack of weapons for recent losses.
A highway collapses in southern China, killing at least 24 people. What we know so far and footage of the harrowing moment.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
More definitive action on the anti-Israel protests happening on college campuses across the nation.
Authorities just cleared out encampments at University of Wisconsin-Madison and Tulane after NYPD stepped in at Columbia University last night.
Here's the New York City mayor.
Those who broke into the building did include students. It was led by individuals who are not affiliated with the university. The school needed the NYPD's assistance to clear Hamilton Hall and the encampments outside. There were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influencing students to escalate. There's nothing peaceful about barricading buildings, destroying property, or dismantling security cameras.
NYPD officers cleared the encampment at Columbia University and reclaimed Hamilton Hall. Police arrested close to 300 people and said most were from City College.
They face preliminary charges ranging from trespassing to criminal mischief. The NYPD is working to find out who were students and who were external actors. The school has asked the police to stay on campus until mid-May after the commencement.
On the other side of the coast, violent clashes broke out between anti-Israel and pro-Israel protesters at UCLA. Footage shows debris and fireworks being thrown around. LAPD officers responded to the scene early this morning and separated the two camps. That's as the student newspaper at UCLA just published an editorial accusing the school of failing to protect students.
Amid the anti-Israel protests, at least one school is reaching an agreement with student protesters. Brown University says it will consider divesting from Israel. Continuing with the anti-Israel protests, NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on New York City Mayor Eric Adams' concerns about external agitators.
Mayor Adams said New York cannot allow peaceful gatherings to turn into violent spectacles that serve no purpose.
We should have been a peaceful protest. It has basically been co-opted by professional outside agitators.
Adams says they were cautious about releasing their intel and information.
Because our goal was to ensure the safety of our students.
Police Commissioner Edward Caban says external actors were involved in the occupation of a Columbia University building.
These people are not Columbia students. They are not affiliated with the university, and they are working to escalate the situation. We are seeing the tactics changing in a way that's endangering public safety.
The NYPD released a video of one such alleged professional protest consultant named Lisa Fithian. She can be seen here calling a pair of students who attempted to stop the anti-Israel protesters from seizing Hamilton Hall a derogatory term, shown on Fox News.
We're trying to document them being
Adams says agitators at the protests are not there to promote peace, but rather to create discord and divisiveness. Former President Trump has claimed that paid agitators were involved in the recent protests. Speaking on Fox News.
Well, I really think you have a lot of paid agitators, professional agitators in here, too, and I see it all over. And, you know, when you see signs and they're all identical, that means they're being paid by a source. These aren't hand-painted signs where people would go to their basement and paint something because they really believed it.
President Trump praised NYPD officers for their work to remove the protesters, but warned the demonstrations are far from settling down as they continue to spread across the country. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel at the moment, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and families of hostages.
Let's hear his comments on the hostage and ceasefire negotiations.
We're determined to get a ceasefire that brings the hostages home and to get it now. And the only reason that wouldn't be achieved is because of Hamas. There is a proposal on the table, and as we've said, no delays, no excuses. The time is now. And the time is now long past due to bring the hostages home to their families.
Blinken is visiting Israel and his push for a ceasefire deal between Israel and the Hamas terrorist group.
The current round of talks appear to be serious, but the sides remain far apart on one key issue: whether the war should end as part of an emerging deal.
A senior Hamas official says they're studying the recent ceasefire offer, but they don't want to be pressured. Blinken says the deal would allow much-needed food, medicine, and water to get into Gaza.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu is urging world leaders to stand against the International Criminal Court. Israel recently said that the court is contemplating issuing arrest warrants on war crime charges. The U.S. stated that the court has no jurisdiction to do so.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson is on thin ice with his job, it seems. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is signaling that she will move forward with an attempt to oust him, just one day after House Democrat leaders promised to back him.
Here's the Congresswoman speaking at a press conference earlier this morning.
We cannot let people down again. We cannot fail President Trump. Next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I can't wait to see Democrats go out and support a Republican speaker and have to go home to their primaries and have to run for Congress again, having supported a Republican speaker, a Christian conservative. I think that'll play well. I'm excited about it.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said Tuesday it was the first he'd heard of Democratic leaders signaling they would help him keep his job. He says it's no time to be playing politics and engaging in chaos.
Johnson has come under fire from some Republicans for his role in passing the $95 billion emergency spending bill.
A small number of GOP members could oust Johnson as Speaker, but only if Democrats vote with them. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and other Democratic leaders say they won't just let that happen.
Congresswoman Greene filed a motion to vacate with the House clerk last month, but the effort hasn't picked up momentum. Former President Trump is visiting the battleground states of Wisconsin and Michigan for campaign events today.
Trump will hold rallies in Waukesha, Wisconsin and Freeland, Michigan. They will mark his first major campaign events since the New York hush money trial began on April 15th.
Trump's campaign said that in Waukesha, Trump will talk about the impact of inflation on households, crime, and his plans to crack down on illegal immigration.
The rallies come a day after the judge in the so-called hush money trial fined Trump $9,000 for violating a gag order. The judge warned Trump that he could be jailed for further violations.
Former President Trump's and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warming up to one another. Their years-long chill could be thawing this spring after a private meeting held in Miami on Sunday. Joining me now for analysis of the move is advisor to Governor Ron DeSantis, Robert Salvador. Good to have you on the show, Robert.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, as an advisor to the Florida governor, what do you know about the recent meeting between him and Trump?
Sure. Well, obviously they met to discuss, how fundraising help can happen, how the governor can use, some of his support to help to drum up, fundraising as well as voter outreach support for former President Trump. I think there's been a lot of made online with some of this infighting and maybe making things seem more serious between former President Trump and Governor DeSantis, than they really were. So they met to kind of call it bury the hatchet, to talk about how to do what's best for America, push forward, good Republican conservative policies, both at the top of the ballot and down ballot. So it was my understanding they had a good meeting and agreed that they were going to work together for the best of the American people.
Now, was this meeting expected, or should we be surprised by the fact that it happened?
I think the meeting itself may have took some people by surprise, but if you look at least on Governor DeSantis' side and, former President Trump's side, it shouldn't be surprising. Governor DeSantis has fully endorsed President Trump, after dropping out of the primary race. He's been clear that he thinks Trump is way better than Biden and more important to get in the White House. And he also said a few weeks ago at a donor retreat and a feedback session that they were planning to fundraise for Trump. So I think both sides did expect this, although the timing of the meeting may not have been planned. As you saw, Governor DeSantis and former President Trump have very similar network and support. And, one of those big supporters may have reached out to both of them and said, hey, let's have a sit down here. Let's figure out how we can do what's best for America, both short term, getting former President Trump back in the White House, and hopefully long-term, following that up with, maybe 8 years of Ron DeSantis in the White House. So overall, I think it was a good decision, and maybe people are surprised, but I don't think people should be that surprised by it.
Now, you sort of touched on this briefly, but what does the former president stand to gain from any potential partnership with Ron DeSantis?
Sure. I mean, so it's pretty clear the two most popular and effective people in the Republican Party are Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. So you definitely want the top two in the party working together. Governor DeSantis only made it to Iowa in the primaries, but I think you would have seen he has a lot of support around the country. And so you definitely don't want to be, alienating that support. And so I think, we've heard some of the stories that the Democrats are doing a bit better in fundraising than the RNC is right now. And I think, bringing in Governor DeSantis, who has big backing and the ability to bring in resources for the former president, is definitely something that'll be beneficial. And then also, securing the base. Obviously, President Trump has a very strong lock on the base, but I do think there was some people, a good amount of people who support Governor DeSantis who may have been a little bit iffy on their support because of how hard fought the primary was. And in order to win any election, it's all about the persuadables. So you definitely have to have your base solidified. So I think this meeting does both of those, brings in some really good resources for the former president, fully secures his base, and now Trump and DeSantis can work together to do that around the country and win the White House back.
Now let's look at the same for the Florida governor. What does he stand to gain from this partnership?
Sure. So if you look at what's happening in Florida, it's become a beacon of freedom, sanity, and success for the United States. And a lot of that has happened under Governor DeSantis the last 6 years. And so he has said, they have another 2 years to really solidify that, to take that success, make it, more long-term in Florida, as well as help to bring that to other Republicans up and down the ballot nationwide. So as, someone like Governor DeSantis has a big future in the party, you certainly don't want to be, at odds with the Republican nominee or even have any sense that people think that. So I think this is good for Governor DeSantis, both in his base support in Florida, as well as him bringing his name nationally as, the next in line after President Trump after here in 2024. So again, I think it was a really good decision by both sides, and I think they'll work together for the best of America.
All right, Robert Salvador, CEO of DigiBuild AI and advisor to Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
A Democratic candidate won a special election in New York State last night. This leaves the GOP's razor-thin majority in the House untouched. Democratic State Senator Timothy Kennedy won the congressional seat previously held by Democrat Brian Higgins, who resigned in February. Kennedy easily defeated Republican Gary Dixon in the district, which includes Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and several suburbs. Kennedy said he would focus in Congress on abortion access, immigration, and stricter gun control. The Democrat will serve in Congress for the rest of the year. He is on the ballot along with Republican attorney Anthony Marecki for the general election. After Kennedy is sworn into office, there will be 217 Republicans, 213 Democrats, and 5 vacancies in the House.
Coming up, Harvey Weinstein is due in Manhattan court today. It will mark his first court appearance since New York's highest court threw out his 2020 rape conviction.
And voice cloning is now almost impossible to detect, and it can quickly ruin lives. An AI expert describes the problem and tells us the laws need to harden. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant house every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming, but your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
How'd it happen?
She showed up dead on arrival.
This never gets easier.
It does when you call CarShield before your car breaks down. Look at these prices. The camshaft, transmission, engine.
Don't people know? A plan through CarShield could protect up to 5,000 parts and systems.
You hate to see it.
An out-of-warranty car is gonna break down eventually.
Right, which is why they need a plan through CarShield. Those expensive repair bills get paid and at the mechanic of their choice. They're notifying the family.
Poor guy, he doesn't even know what's coming.
Another victim of senselessly expensive repair bills. Can't save them all.
But we can keep trying. Didn't have to end this way. If he'd have just called CarShield before his car broke down.
Exactly.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in cost for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-429-5128.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
Harvey Weinstein is due in court in Manhattan today. It's his first court appearance since the New York Court of Appeals threw out his 2020 rape conviction. Last week, the court ruled that allowing testimony about alleged sexual assaults not included in the charges violated Weinstein's right to a fair trial.
The 2020 verdict was hailed as a milestone for the Me Too movement, in which women accused hundreds of influential men of sexual misconduct.
Weinstein was serving a 23-year prison sentence. He has denied having non-consensual sexual encounters with anyone.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has signaled his office plans to retry Weinstein. Florida's 6-week abortion ban goes into effect today. Sean Carney, founder of the pro-life organization 40 Days of Life, says it's important to offer alternatives for women facing challenging circumstances.
The 6-week ban, the heartbeat bill, as it's been called, is fantastic. I mean, it got bipartisan support. A lot of Democrats supported it here in Texas. We have a record number of medical resources for women and a surplus. The birth rate went up in Texas. I think for all women, it feels like there's no choice. I mean, no woman has an abortion because of freedom or because of choice. They have an abortion because they feel they have no freedom, because they feel they have no choice. And whether they take us up on our offer to give them another option at the last moment, offer free medical care, typically they're very appreciative of it because it is a difficult choice, and we do offer one last chance, to turn around, and many women do.
Carney remains optimistic about reshaping the discourse surrounding abortion access. He anticipates a shift away from the slogan, "My body, my choice." He says the fact that there's another body is the problem.
The new law, which lowers the abortion limit from 15 weeks, will have a broader effect across the South.
Florida has been a destination for abortions since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, when bans in states such as Alabama and Georgia could take effect. And new data regarding a controversial immigration program. The Biden administration uses the parole program to fly immigrants directly into the U.S. New documents now show which cities they're landing in. And just as previously suspected, the vast majority arrive in Florida. Homeland Security never shared where these flights land. Reports previously suggested that Florida might be a key destination. That's despite the fact that the Republican-led state is against uncontrolled immigration.
Now, House Republicans received documents through a subpoena. They show where the immigrants landed from January to August of last year.
Miami and Fort Lauderdale were leading the list with around 150,000 arrivals in total. In comparison, New York City is at the third spot with only around 15,000 arrivals.
In total, Homeland Security flew around 200,000 immigrants to 50 airports across the country during those 6 months.
And Americans keep saying immigration is the most critical issue facing the U.S. For the third straight month, a Gallup poll put immigration at the #1 spot. Gallup released the new findings yesterday. 27% of Americans say immigration is the most crucial issue the U.S. is facing. It comes out on top of other issues like the government, the economy, and inflation.
28% held this view in February and March as well. This is the closest consecutive window in which immigration has been a top concern for Americans.
The poll does not differentiate between legal and illegal immigration. So far, Border Patrol encountered almost 8 million illegal immigrants during the Biden administration.
A Harvard-Harris poll conducted last week found that immigration and inflation, tied as the most crucial issues, both stood at 35%. Federal restrictions for marijuana could soon become looser. The Justice Department is starting the process to make it a Schedule III drug instead of a Schedule I.
The change would ease criminal penalties, let marijuana businesses bank more freely, and give tax benefits to state licensed operators.
A Pew Research Center poll shows most Americans support legalizing marijuana for medical use, and just over half for recreational use. Reclassifying it doesn't go that far, but advocates welcome looser restrictions.
Others caution that marijuana can lead to health issues and addiction.
Currently, state laws allowing marijuana exist in a gray area. The reclassification will take months due to steps outlined in the Controlled Substances Act. A new form of crime powered by artificial intelligence, stealing voices. It's what led to the character assassination of a Baltimore high school principal. A former colleague allegedly used AI to impersonate the voice of the principal. The fake voice was used to make it sound like the principal went on a racist and anti-Semitic rant. Here to help us understand the technology that made this possible is Phil Siegel, founder of the AI nonprofit organization Captors. Phil Siegel, thank you so much for joining us. First, start by telling us how this AI voice cloning technology works.
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, you've been able to, quote unquote, clone voices for as long as we know. It's just before it was very easy for all us to say, oh, well, that's clearly a tape or that's a bad recording or whatever. With the new technologies that are out there, they're able to take the vibrations of the voice, the inflections, the sounds, and make a very good replica. Still, people are able, after lots of painstaking investigation, like in the case that I know you want to talk about, and be able to say that's actually not real. On the other hand, now it is much, much more difficult to do that than it was before these artificial intelligence algorithms were able to take a voice and make a very, very good facsimile.
Are you able to give us some sense of how much better this technology is? I mean, how accurately can AI cloning technology recreate a person's voice?
It very accurately. I don't know how to think about it from a layperson, but where before, let's say you and I could probably just by ear figure it out, and maybe the technologies, 4 years ago, you and I probably couldn't figure it out just by listening, but if we took it to any kind of reasonable sound technician, they could figure it out. Now it takes very sophisticated well, if somebody is using these algorithms to their best, it takes a very sophisticated technology to figure out that this is not real. So maybe before, where it was, it might be 1,000 times better, let's say, than it was before.
Wow. Are law enforcement officers and prosecutors able to keep up with this technology?
I think they will be able to, much in the same way they keep up with DNA technology, other technologies as well. The problem that you had in this case is that you have all the social media noise in the background that turns this into a massive problem before they're able to do that. In the case of let's say a homicide where they're looking at DNA data, there might be talk on social media, but it's not like they're talking about a specific person and accusing them of something and so on and so forth, and it really doesn't hold a lot of water. In this particular case, this person's career was nearly destroyed because it was very easy. We knew who the person was, and they were able to have conversations about that before the truth came out.
All right, Phil Siegel, thank you so much. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Up next, transferring military gear among the U.S., Australia, and Britain might soon be easier. We bring you the details of the new plan and what China has to do with it.
In Georgia, a bill banning Chinese agents from buying land has become law. A look at which other states have taken the same step and why. We'll have the details soon when we return.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skipped meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive. And they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay." And I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org. Working together, we can end hunger in America.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, there was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
And now we have some short headlines from Russia, Turkey, and other European countries. Transferring military gear and sensitive technology might soon be easier for the U.S., Australia, and Britain. The U.S. and Australia unveiled a plan to reduce licensing requirements.
The three countries increased cooperation in 2021 to address China's growing power, but not being able to share closely guarded technology has been a hurdle for cooperation. That's because it's governed by strict U.S. regulations.
The proposed rule change would now reduce some administrative burdens and applies mostly to companies seeking to make defense products in Australia or the UK. Russia today ordering more and faster delivery of weapons for its war in Ukraine. Russia's defense minister reportedly says that's needed to maintain the pace of its offensive.
Russian forces have made nearly daily tactical advances in recent weeks. Ukraine blames a lack of weapons on its part for that.
Russia has taken about half a dozen villages in the Donetsk region. They also strengthened battlefield positions in the Kharkiv region. Turkish police today detained May Day protesters trying to march to a square in Istanbul. That's after the government banned protests in the city's main square.
Historically, protesters held rallies in the square on May Day, but all demonstrations there have been banned in recent years. The leader of the main opposition party called on followers to still march to the square today.
In other parts of Istanbul, scuffles broke out between police and other left-wing groups. They were also trying to get to the square.
Officers detained several people. Riot police pushed back groups trying to break through the barricade. Law enforcement used tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the protesters.
Ireland wants to continue sending asylum seekers back to the United Kingdom. The nation's government now plans to enact legislation for that by the end of May.
Last month, the Irish High Court ruled that the country could not send back people who arrived from the UK. That's because the Irish government had not outlined whether they could be at risk on their return.
Ireland's Prime Minister now says his goal is to overcome that High Court ruling. The European Union says it will investigate Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, over its handling of disinformation and advertising.
The EU is expected to focus its investigation on a Russian-backed influence campaign. Concern is growing in the United States and in Europe about potential interference in upcoming elections.
If the EU finds Meta violated rules that are supposed to safeguard against disinformation and deceptive advertising, the social media company could face millions of dollars in fines.
Meta said in a statement it is cooperating with the European Commission's investigation and continues to identify risks on its platform.
Georgia is joining several other states restricting certain Chinese citizens from purchasing land in the state over security concerns. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed a bill into law yesterday targeting the issue.
We cannot allow foreign adversaries to control something as critical to our survival as our food supply. And that's why I'm proud to sign this bill that will prohibit the ownership or acquisition of agriculture or non-residential land within a certain radius of a military location.
The new act bans any agent of China from buying farmland in Georgia, plus any commercial land within 10 miles of any military bases.
Agents of Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Russia are also affected by the new law, though the measure targets these countries. Much discussion among lawmakers at the state capitol focused on China.
States including Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas have passed similar bans. The laws gained traction after U.S. fighter jets shot down that Chinese spy balloon last year.
Some Democrats criticized the act, calling it discriminatory. Other critics warned the bill could face legal hurdles. At least 24 people have died after a section of a highway collapsed in southern China following weeks of heavy rain. Authorities say dozens more are injured.
Early Wednesday morning, Beijing time, a section of a highway in South China suddenly collapsed. But Beijing has a history of covering up the real data, so the death toll remains unverified.
What we do know is that 24 vehicles fell during the collapse, igniting explosions and fires. Videos from the site show the blackened remains of the cars piled together, up in flames and emitting heavy smoke.
The incident happened in China's southern province of Guangzhou, where it's been raining for nearly a month. The rainfall significantly increased in the past 2 weeks, along with flooding.
It appears the ground beneath the highway caved in on itself.
And people across the world today may be taking part inadvertently in one of the world's greatest atrocities, the theft of living organs from prisoners of conscience in China. But not if you're in Texas or now Utah. A new law puts a stop to health providers covering or providing post-care for organ transplant surgery in China and any other country where forced organ harvesting is believed to occur. That's because transplant tourism continues today, with people traveling for procedures that could save their lives and yet end in others. To shed light on this horrific phenomenon, we're joined by Weldon Gilcrease, the Deputy Director of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Dr. Gilcrease, welcome. How significant is this law in Utah in a symbolic sense, and also how many lives do you think could be impacted?
It's a great question. I think the thing about transplant is it's a complicated procedure that involves many different facets. So there's not just the transplant surgeon or the people in the operating room, but also the aftercare and the doctors that take care of those patients afterwards. There's nurses, social workers, and there's a whole host of a team. So I think looking at it as one victim that's killed for their organ, for one transplant, for somebody from Utah that may travel there, it's not just that one victim. I think a lot of complicity from the entire medical field, not just in China, but in Utah, in the aftercare of those patients. It also has the ability to protect a lot of those people as well.
For sure, and nobody would knowingly want to take part in something like this, but it is hard to believe forced organ harvesting from a living person. Could you explain how this came about, how it is a systemic thing happening in China and who it's targeting?
Yeah, so what happened in China, if you go back to the 1990s, China was doing very few transplants. So as an example, they were doing less than 25 or 20 liver transplants per year. And starting in the early 2000s, you see this explosion of transplant data or number of transplants that are happening in China with no organ distribution or organ donation system within China. So there was really no explanation for it. And in 2005, a liver transplant surgeon within China is on film essentially saying 95% of our transplants are coming from executions. Now, the word that he used was executed criminals, but what came out in 2006 was that these weren't criminals that were being harvested in terms of their organs after an execution. These were people that were being killed on demand. And it really coincided with the crackdown on Falun Gong practitioners in 1999. So what happened in 1999 when the government turned against 70 to 100 million Chinese that were practicing Falun Gong was that you flooded the detention centers, the prisons, the labor camps with roughly 450,000 to 1 million Falun Gong practitioners who were, for the most part, young and healthy. They didn't smoke and they didn't drink. And so what you have in China in the transplant system is going from very little transplants to essentially using Falun Gong practitioners as victims and killing them on demand for their organs. This has also spread to other victim groups like the Uyghurs in Xinjiang who are in concentration camps, and 1 to 2 million Uyghurs are in concentration camps in Western China, but also probably House Christians, Tibetans, and other victim groups within China.
Right, yeah, so we've got Uyghurs, you mentioned that's a minority group, ethnic group within China. Falun Gong, a spiritual meditative discipline that's targeted and has been targeted for at least 2 decades within China. So these are groups that are really being targeted for who they are. I just want to ask you next, what do you think needs to be done to raise enough awareness and garner international support to help end this practice? Because nobody around the world wants to take part in this.
Yeah, and it's exceptionally hard to believe that it's happening and that it continues to happen. I think I think that even though this is a step in the right direction, as a physician, I'm somewhat disappointed that a lot of this hasn't come from the medical community, and I think that's really two-part. I mean, one is there's just not enough awareness, and then one is, I think, a fear of standing up and stepping up to the Chinese regime, which, you know, is still collaborating with a lot of our American institution and Western institutions in terms of medical facilities, medical doctors, researchers, et cetera.
And what do you think people can do to learn more about this, just individuals out there?
Yeah, well, you know, just even a simple search for forced organ harvesting, you can find, in my mind, the three major reports. The first one from 2006, which is the Matus and Kilgore report. In 2016, there's a 760-page report that came out called An Update to the Slaughter and the Bloody Harvest. That's available online. And then in 2019 and 2020, there's a 7-person independent tribunal chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, and their report, which is over 500 pages, is also available. I think the easy part is finding the data and finding the reports that exist out there. The hard part is actually starting to sift through a lot of that data. You know, simple other ways of looking at it are there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of documentaries on it that I think shed light on what's happening and what has happened in the transplant system in China.
And certainly people can turn to your organization, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, to see how they can also help out and learn more. Thank you so much, Dr. Weldon Gilcrease. Great to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Coming up, over 15,000 Olympic athletes will soon converge in Paris. What gourmet treats are French hosts going to be serving them? Get ready to go on a culinary journey for a taste of the 2024 Paris Olympics. More shortly here on NTD News Today.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging, gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see, must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. ShenYun.com.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
What was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. this doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
Welcome back, everyone. Preparations are underway for the Paris Summer Olympics. Over 500 recipes have been created for several chefs. They will feed the 15,000 athletes converging on the 2024 Olympic Village. Let's take a look at some of the delicious and nutritious meals Olympians will enjoy this summer.
The Paris 2024 Olympics will soon host athletes from around the world. Each athlete has different dietary needs. This 3-star Michelin chef describes some of his contributions.
I'm preparing a dish which the athletes will be able to eat with tapioca in a concentration of vegetable broth. This hake fish is burned in satay to bring this salty taste, but also this smooth and spicy feeling with this slow cooking technique and a slight roasting.
While some offerings for athletes might be tempting gourmet delights, regular menu items are equally important, especially one special ingredient necessary for most athletes' diets.
They have gluten-free diets and plant-based protein diets. Pasta is obviously the very important element in an athlete's food. It slows sugars.
This chef is creating a traditional French cuisine-inspired dish that's both delicious and easy for athletes to eat on the go.
I wanted to create recipes that are representative of Paris, that are easy and that you could eat easily. It's a croissant that we've filled with artichoke cream, a poached egg, and on top we've added some truffle and sheep's cheese.
The chefs are anxious to show off French cooking and culture to the world. The combination of legendary cuisine and unique gourmet creations will provide athletes with a menu meeting their nutritional needs and pleasing their palates.
We're proud to be able to welcome the whole world, to represent France, to represent know-how, to highlight our heritage, to also highlight all our artisans. It is an incredible source of pride to be able to show TIA capable of satisfying all the nutritional and energy needs of all athletes around the world.
With over 200 nationalities represented at the Paris Olympics, there will be plenty of food choices to make athletes feel at home.
And staying with food, the long-held stereotype that ancient humans hunted large animals and ate large amounts of meat may not be accurate. According to a new study, ancient people consumed less animal flesh than previously known.
The study, published on Monday in the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution, sheds new light on what Stone Age humans really ate.
The researchers studied a group of hunter-gatherers that lived between 13,000 and 15,000 years ago. Their remains were discovered in modern-day Morocco.
Chemical signatures in the bones and teeth of at least 7 individuals showed that plants, not meat, were their primary source of dietary protein. There's so much health advice out there, it can be hard to figure out the essentials. Gina Marie with Strong Mind and Body has some advice for us. Here are 4 healthy practices that can have a major impact on your long-term health.
On our last episode, we talked about 4 easy ways to destroy perfectly good health. We discussed dehydration, poor posture, sleep deprivation, and chronic stress. Now we will discuss the importance of a good diet, regular exercise, and the importance of oral health and doctor's visits. Paying attention to these 4 healthy practices can keep minor issues from becoming major health problems. Let's start with number 1, diet. Many people fail to understand the consequences of a bad diet, especially how it can worsen conditions and diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, and dementia. Some people have the willpower to regain control of their eating habits, but most don't. You'll want to start by consulting professionals such as doctors, health coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, and personal trainers. Number 2 on the list, exercise. Sitting is the new smoking. The average adult spends about 7.7 waking hours per day being sedentary. This leads to decreased cardiovascular and muscle function. The National Institutes of Health recommend at least 150 minutes of exercise weekly. Number 3, oral health. Poor oral health can lead to periodontal disease. This ultimately leads to tooth loss and dentures. The bacteria associated with these problems can migrate into other areas of the body. This can contribute to other diseases. Research links poor oral hygiene to heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and low birth weight. So be sure to schedule regular dental visits. And finally, number 4, doctor's visits. Many patients wish they'd been proactive about visiting their physicians before problems progressed. Ignoring problems can allow cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure to develop quietly and unchecked. The damage can be irreversible, affecting your quality of life and functional independence. Plan a visit to your doctor to prevent this outcome.
For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.
See you then.